Would it be possible for the government to ban Bitcoin? And if yes, what would be my own plan? Let's take a look in today's video. Hey and welcome to today's video. My name is Julian. On my channel, it's all about making you cryptofit. We talk about the beautiful world of blockchain, cryptocurrencies, decentralization, and much, much more. Today, I want to tackle a question that I personally believe most Bitcoiners out there do not think about. And if they think about it, they have a completely wrong answer. So you want to watch this video today. I'm going to go it all the way through. And at the very end, I'm going to give you my personal plan on how to kind of approach this and how to kind of attack this. And it is about banning Bitcoin. It's a topic that many investors out there that are not investing in Bitcoin, well, they claim Bitcoin could be banned. Ray Dalio very famously just came out and said the government will ban Bitcoin. And well, if you ask this question to most Bitcoiners, they'll tell you bullshit. You cannot ban Bitcoin. Bitcoin is just mathematics. It's just code. You can't ban it. Let's take a bit of a look and let's kind of approach this topic and well, dig a bit deeper. For this, I'll switch to my iPad because I want to do some drawing and some explaining. So yeah, then it's a bit more structured. So when we talk about a Bitcoin ban, there's actually a very good analogy that we can use. And I personally love to play chess. Maybe you like to play poker or many other games. At the end, it's a similar process in all those games. And well, if you learn a game properly, the very first thing you always learn in a game is tactics. So I still remember when I was very young and I learned chess for the very first time. You play with the king and the queen and you try to checkmate the other king, and then you switch to just a rook, and then you go with two bishops, and you kind of work your way down, and then you go into situations and you try to see what's the best move in this situation. So there's a lot of tactics. And in poker, it's exactly the same thing. You get a hand, and then the question is, well, how much would you bet right now? What would be your kind of game plan right now? Or yeah, and in Bitcoin, this means many times you learn how to buy Bitcoin. You look at, is this a good time to buy right now? You learn how to store your Bitcoins with a ledger. And so all these principles kind of these are the things that you get started with. And also very interesting, when you watch or listen to other people, most of the time they will talk about tactics, right? So many YouTubers, most of them, they talk about tactics. They talk about chart analysis, which most of the time is just tactics. So it's very, from a time horizon perspective, it's not very far into the future. So it's really about the here and now, and that's the easiest one to get started with. Generally speaking, this is what you learn very early on, and then you try to learn other things. And so one of those things that you try to learn next is strategy. And strategies are just way more broad. For example, in chess, when well, you try to do openings, for example, right? Just studying openings has a lot to do with tactics as well. But then suddenly it is about, well, where should you put your bishop? Should you put it on this tile, or do you move it one further? In poker, well, what's the entire strategy? Maybe not only in one hand, but maybe for an entire game, maybe for an entire tournament, right? You kind of set up strategies there. And well, suddenly you realize strategies are way harder. Simply because the time horizon gets larger, you have way more uncertainties, and it just gets really difficult. The same in Bitcoin, right? Certain strategies in Bitcoin go for weeks, go for months, go for years, right? Well, dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin. When should you buy? When should you sell? How do you hodl? What are valuations going forward? So suddenly the entire thing goes way further. And with most people, right, on YouTube and most, that's where people stop, right? So after the second spot, this is where they stop as a whole. And well, in chess, for example, my ELO is around 2000, right? And I play on lichess, and then I get addicted to chess so much that I then need to delete my account. I need to stop playing again. But what you notice is, right? I still remember when I had a chess coach actually, and he helped me to get like from 1900 to 2000. And he told me the exact same thing. He said, Julian, you're really good with your tactics and you're really good with your strategies, but you're lacking the next step. And I was like, what's next? Like, I don't really understand this. I mean, look, what else? What else is there? Tactics and strategies. I'm not 100% sure in all of this. And then, well, at the end, he said, whatever you call it, it's preparation. It's the stuff that takes really long time. It's getting ready. It's analyzing the other player. And this is suddenly what struck me. So many times when I was playing against others, they checked my past games and they knew my favorite openings. They knew the traps that I was setting. They really kind of studied me. And so very many times when you work with people, you can see how well equipped they are going forward and how much you should actually listen to them. For the very simple reason, because where are they stuck? If people still talk about tactics, you know, okay, they're probably quite new in this, or they never really worked it all the way through. And then you talk about strategies, you're like, wow, they're quite well equipped. And then you suddenly have this preparation. And well, in this preparation, suddenly you realize people study the past and they want to learn from it and they want to prepare for the future. And so why do I talk to you about this? Well, I think when we come to a potential Bitcoin ban in the future, we can actually do the same thing, and we should actually do the same thing. And now there are a couple of ideas here that you need to understand in all of this, right? And one of those things is called candidate moves. And this is something that differentiates, mainly in number 2 and also number 3, differentiates amateurs from really, really, really good players. And it's the same thing in anything. It's the same thing in investing, whatever it takes. Candidate moves means you understand tactics, you understand strategies, and you're really prepared. The difficult part about candidate moves is actually the third part, and that is, in order to be really good in candidate moves, one thing you need to have a lot of logic, right? You need to be able to calculate. You need to be able, okay, if the queen moves here, this is what's going to happen. If this moves there, then whatever, right? So you need to be able to really do a lot of calculations. The second thing, you need to have a lot of creativity. The more creative you are, with the crazier moves you can come up with. And that's a very, very, very important concept. So most people, again, they learn to play and they get really, really good at calculating all the way through. And that's what you see today, right? So you see a lot of YouTubers and they discuss these things, and they're very creative with ideas. But now there is the third part. And in most candidate moves, and that's a key thing, you need to consider the enemy. And I still remember very, very early on when I was playing against my chess coach, I thought I was really, really great because I had these really creative candidate moves. I was like, you know, I'm just gonna sacrifice my queen there and he's gonna take it, or he has to take it, and then, you know, I can move my bishop there and then boom, checkmate. Well, I moved my queen in and he checkmated me straight away because I completely forgot that, well, at the end, I was kind of giving up something and he could come in with the rook and checkmate me straight away. And so these are very basic concepts that people tend to assume that they're always right. They tend to assume that their plan is foolproof. So I can force checkmate, right? So I can do 4 moves and I can force checkmate. But very rarely can you ever force anything in life, especially not when you deal with the government. Most of the time in real life, the government always has a counterattack. And this counterattack is what makes so many people struggle in investing, because they don't dare to ask, how could I be wrong? Because asking that I could be wrong, it means that all the moves I've done so far mean I didn't do good moves. And people don't like to admit that. They want to admit that they have done everything correctly. Admitting you've done something wrong is not good. And you sitting there and you asking, and this is now the key question here, and if you're a good lawyer, or if you've ever been in debating, if you play chess on a very high level, even in poker, right? All these games, the question, if I were on the other side, how would I defeat this position? How would I defeat this position? And this is now the question that I would love you to ask, because now you get basically here to the preparation, you get into full strategies, full tactics, and you really work out the candidate moves. Because now this comes, okay, if I were on the other side, I would attack this pawn. I would attack here. So you can sit there and be like, okay, great. If I would be attacking this, how would I be defending this? But now you can go to the other side and you can start calculating even further. You could be like, okay, if I were attacking this, the other person would be defending this. Now, how would I attack this defense? And so now the only question that becomes, how far down the line are we calculating the if-then scenarios? But here's the tricky thing. Most people actually never really think the other side. So if we put all this now into Bitcoin lingo, right? And we talk about a Bitcoin ban, let's kind of break this down. And one of the worst answers, if you ever hear this answer, this is basically a forced checkmate move. It means you believe you can force checkmate the government. I doubt that you can do this, and I doubt that we are at this level. So if someone says a ban is impossible, if they ever say a ban is impossible, this means that you're playing check. You play chess against the government, and you are 100% sure that at the stage that Bitcoin is in right now, you can force checkmate the government in the next 6 moves. I mean, I don't know how strong your conviction is, but I highly doubt that the government will ever be in a forced checkmate position. I just really highly doubt that. And I've never met any smart person, or that I consider smart, that thinks that you can force checkmate the government. At the end, I think Jim Rogers always has this famous quote. He says, they have the guns and you don't. So let's be realistic here. I highly doubt that an answer that says a Bitcoin ban is impossible is a good answer. And there's a lot of becauses, right? So for example, a Bitcoin ban is impossible because all the countries would have to ban it at the same time. Well, that's actually incorrect. Most of the time, it's only the US that has to ban it, and most other countries jump on, right? You can just look. I mean, if the US has a problem with what BitMEX is doing, suddenly, well, these guys get hunted pretty much everywhere, right? And then suddenly all the other countries follow suit. So I'm not 100% sure if that's a good answer. Also, I don't know how likely, maybe only half of the countries in the world, or maybe only a third of the countries, maybe you don't want to move then. Maybe you just say, hey, but I want to stay in my country. I'm not sure how likely people will move. Again, this answer is really, really bad in my opinion. The other answer, well, but that's math. How is math going to get banned? Sure, you're right. But again, this is that's like the move, okay, I'm going to go in with the queen, and I for sure know the government is going to do this move next. You're not considering that they're moving in with the rook and suddenly you're checkmate. And these are the basic mistakes. And I'm telling you, most people think this way, right? So a ban is impossible. And then the next thing is, they think a ban in way too simplistic terms. So they're really thinking on very basic principles. They're not really going all the way down. So they're just like, okay, the government's gonna sit there and says, the ban is impossible, and then the people are gonna say, sorry, it's not, and then the government says, oh yeah, you're right, and then suddenly checkmate. I just highly doubt that, right? So let's truly, with all the knowledge that we have, put yourself on the other side. Let's say you were the government. How would you approach this? And here's the trick here. Most people don't want to do this because they don't want to admit that they are in a weak position. They don't like doing this because they don't want to admit to themselves that their pawn here is weak. Here's a key thing. People prefer to be right over doing the right thing. And that's how you win in anything. That's how you win in business. That's how you win in investing. That's how you win in anything. You win because most people prefer to be right than to actually doing the right thing. So they don't want to challenge themselves. And since most people don't challenge, they believe they sit in their ivory tower and they're going to win. So if you want to be a good investor, you need to dare to challenge yourself, and you need to dare to be challenged. I know, difficult situation today in a world where opinions are not allowed to be challenged anymore, and as soon as you have a different opinion, you immediately get polarizing. I understand that. But again, that's investing, and you here want to do the right thing. So let's play this through. If you were the government, how would you do this? And again, you might want to pause the video right now and let me know in the comments below. How would you do it? Because I'm going to give you my way how I would do it if I were the government. And then I'm going to tell you how, again, so this is the pawn, this is the weakness. Okay, this is how I would attack it. So that's how I think I'm going to prepare for it, right? Key thing. So let's kind of walk this through. Well, and that's not a step 3. That's candidate moves here, right? That's actually the candidate moves, actually really thinking it through. So if I were the government and I wanted to ban Bitcoin, I would ban Bitcoin. And I would then do it this way. Not that I would make Bitcoin completely worthless, because then I would have too much opposition. I would just go and say Bitcoin right now is worth $500,000. And this is also an important point. I don't think the government cares about Bitcoin right now because it's totally irrelevant. It's such a small, tiny amount right now. So let's say Bitcoin hits $500,000 and then the government really realizes, holy crap, that's actually like gold. Gold is, we can regulate it quite well, but now there's this virtual gold, quite dangerous. Never thought it's gonna get that big. So let's do this. Bitcoin, owning Bitcoin is from now on illegal. Any kind of business involved in Bitcoin is not gonna be able to do it anymore. We are gonna buy all the Bitcoin that's there at a fixed price. For example, at $500,000. Now, you think this is not going to happen? Trust me, it happened before. It happened with gold. It happens with many, many things. It happens with land in first world countries, right? So again, it's a candidate move. I'm not saying this is what's going to happen. This is how I would do it, right? So I would go and say, I'm going to be buying Bitcoin. Maybe I would buy Bitcoin at 10% premium at the current price so that everyone is kind of supposedly happy. And the next thing I would be doing, I would be running a lot of media campaigns. So I need to manipulate the media to tell everyone that everyone who's not selling back the Bitcoin to the government is doing something fraudulent and is the evil, is the enemy. You need to start manipulating, just like in the media today, right? This is how you move people. So I would do the exact same thing. So now I incentivize you financially to sell the Bitcoin back to the government. At the same time, you get a lot of social pressure. And on the other hand, obviously, I have some more legit or fake kind of punishment. I put you into prison or whatever. You can go to prison for 10 years. Probably no one ever goes, but this is the potential punishment. And so I'm putting up a lot of things. On the one hand, I would incentivize you to give it back to the government. On the other hand, I would put a lot of social pressure on there. On the other hand, I'll put a potential legal threat to it. And so now suddenly, this is how I would then take away all the Bitcoins without pumping up the price. And let's face it, even if all the Bitcoin in the world would be worth $10 trillion, I mean, that's literally nothing compared to how quick the government can just print that money, right? I just want to explain that to you. And so this already shows you a couple of ideas. Now, this is important here. First of all, I think the government is not going to ban Bitcoin and make it worthless. I think they're going to do the exact same thing that they did with gold when they banned it, right? That's the first important thing. Second important thing, I'm preparing that if the government bans Bitcoin, they're going to run a lot of social and media and opinion-making campaigns. So I need to understand that. And the other thing, if no one knows how much Bitcoin I have, well, it's easy for me to sell my half Bitcoin back to the government, and I did my job. And I sold my half Bitcoin back. So that's the key thing. Now I can start preparing. I can start to understand. I can understand what is the government probably going to do. How do I envision it? I cannot come up with a better answer. Maybe you have an even more aggressive answer. Maybe you have a better candidate move, right? And then that would be great. Post it, because then I can start thinking it through. Because obviously, again, I want to be prepared. So how am I going to get prepared today? Well, I'm prepared to sell them my half Bitcoin that I own. I don't have anything else, right? So I'm going to be selling that to them. Hopefully $500,000, maybe $1 million. Great, right? Let me think it through. If you think they're going to ban it and just everyone has to throw their Bitcoin away, I highly doubt that's the move that they would be making, just because it would cause too much resistance. But then if you influx all the people and you push the people, then they're going to go into a direction where they're happy to sell Bitcoin because there's a lot of social pressure, and then the government is in control. So this is kind of how I think this through. Now, I think very few people actually think it all the way through, because, and now is the key thing, this allows me to make decisions today that protect me if that scenario ever comes in place. And at the end, that's what great chess players, great poker players, what great investors at the end do. They try to challenge their opinions. Now, you can challenge me and say, okay, look, Julian, I have a way better idea how to kind of do this. Well, let me know. How, if you were the government, how would you be doing this? Right? Because at the end, that would be probably the question, let's say, to a Ray Dalio that I would ask, right? I say, okay, Ray, thanks. You said that you think Bitcoin would be banned, would be illegal. How do you think the government would do this? That would be an interesting question, because that is exactly the candidate move that I would love to understand. And if then suddenly I realize that in this candidate move, I have no chance in winning, I would really need to consider my investment thesis. But if I understand, great, okay, this is the government. That's how the government would do it. Fantastic. That's then how I'm going to do it. Okay, probably the government's going to react to this, so I need to react to that. And I need to be prepared up front. I need to have tactics and strategies in place today that when in 5 or 10 years, or if that ever going to happen, at what price is this going to happen, I am ready. And so that to me is a very, very important concept here. So let me know what you think about all this. Do you think my thinking here is correct? Do you think a potential Bitcoin ban could ever happen? If yes, how do you think this would happen? Do you see it very similar? Or do you think a Bitcoin ban is an absolutely impossible scenario, which I think is not a very good thought process? But I would be very curious to understand. So yeah, let me know in the comments below how you think this, maybe what kind of tactics and strategies do you have in place for this? And obviously, if you don't want to miss any videos here, click the subscribe button. If you love this video, click the like and consider sharing this in Telegram groups or with other people, because the more people understand this, the more creative thinking comes and the better prepared we can be and the better we as a community can stick together. So with this, see you at the next video. Thanks so much, Julian.